Good evening and welcome to the Cross Stitch Cooldown. It's Tuesday evening and we are still working on our space cross stitch. And we are specifically working on all of these pin stitches that are creating all of these little stars. So we're going to just keep on going with that. We left off on this capital R with the rocket ship. And we are going to go, we're just going to get right down to it. So, looking at our pattern, this pin stitch is going to be even with this top row of yellow, and there will be a gap of 3. So 1, 2, 3, so that hole is the bottom left. And then because it's a pin stitch, I need to split the weave on the right side, just like that, and I'll mark it from the front. There we go. This is the locking stitch of the pin stitch. So we begin by coming up, splitting the weave between the top right hole and the bottom right hole. And then we go down through the middle of the stitch there, and then we come up between the left 2 holes, and then we go right back down the middle where we went earlier, and we create this cute tiny little locking stitch that you can just barely see, but that will keep our floss from coming out of the weave. So now we'll start our stitch. Bottom left, we'll just do a normal stitch here. There it is. Okay. And now we need to lock it to close it out. So we will split the weave between the bottom 2 holes here. Just like that. And then from the front, we will tuck it down underneath the thread to hide it, so you can't see it there at all. And then from the back, we will split between the top 2 stitches on the back. And then we will again slip underneath the threads of this front stitch and then out through the back. Boom. 1 pin stitch done. It's gorgeous and it's all locked in. Oh, come on. No. Work with me, not against me here, camera. Oh, perfect. Okay. No, it's not hard. Okay. So we are currently stitching with E940, which is a glow-in-the-dark floss. We're going to increment our stitch counter here. So we're at 5068, 79% remaining. Let's do another one to the left of the rocket blast here. Right there's the bottom left. So we will split the stitch right there. That seems appropriate. And you will be rewarded by positioning these splits well. It will be much cleaner and more subtle if you exactly split the weave exactly in the middle there. Okay, so let's try this left one here. That should do it. And with practice, you'll get super good at these, but practice is, with anything you're not very good at, practice can be very irritating and time consuming. There you go. Nice subtle little locking stitch on that pin stitch. These 3 sons of guns, see these 3 strands sitting out here? Those are going to get in our way. So we're going to cut them off. This if we were using a normal floss, one that wasn't a glow in the dark, those 3 strands would manifest themselves really as a single thread. But as I've mentioned before, this glow in the dark floss is really, it acts like 3 separate strands instead of 1 strand, and it can be a little bothersome to keep everything wrangled tight and together. It's just constantly checking your needle and making sure everything is pulled even and taut. Alright, so there's another stitch there. So we'll lock it to close it out, and to do that, again, we find exactly even between the bottom 2 holes, which I believe to be right there. And then we dive back under the stitches we've just done to split the weave. Yep. And then we will split the canvas between the top 2 holes. Oh, see how I caught a little bit of the front thread there? That's no good. So I hope we can lose it without having to pull the needle all the way back through. Yep, got it. And then back out through the center of the stitch. And there's another locking stitch, and that's another pin stitch. We'll up that count. Every stitch is another step closer to being done. I think we've got about 1 more stitch left on this amount of thread before we retire it. So let's find a good one. I think it'll be the last stitch of this R, and then we can move down to the X. So it's going to be just to the left of this star here. So we will split right here. Yes, right there. And that was just to mark it, because we're going to start from the back. Alright. And then splitting it again, going down through the center of the stitch. And then coming up from the left side of the stitch. And then back down through the middle. And every time when you're doing this locking stitch, there we go, there's another nice clean little locking stitch. Every time you go down and up, you can feel the resistance getting tighter, like you can feel it getting more and more locked in. The straggler got sucked under. Let's see if I can, nope, cut it off here. I had one of the strands on the back got looped under a stitch. I teased it out. It's done. It's gone. Adios. Sayonara. Goodbye. You are not wanted. There we go. I flip the hoop over a lot when I'm stitching. I hope that's not making anybody seasick. But I need to be able to see on the back. I don't like just blindly thrusting the needle in hoping it comes through the right appropriate spot. I like to be able to see exactly where I'm putting it. In my experience, it just keeps everything cleaner. Maybe takes a little longer, but the final product is better. Unless I can develop godlike skills where I can just do it totally blind and totally by feel. That'd be cool. It's not where I'm at. All right, there's one more. We will cut this bad boy off. Increment the stitch count. 50, 70. We'll retire this piece of extra loose thread. Put that on display for you there. Okay, X. If you check out the pattern, we're moving to X. The camera, it really, really loves all that background. So let's pull that away here. We'll focus on threading the needle. There we go. That's the focus of our attention, threading the needle. Loop it over, pull it tight, pull it through the eye of the needle, and we are threaded. And we can do more pin stitches. So we're going down to the X. X marks the spot. A row down from the top row of the X, and then one over from the left side. So that's going to be the bottom left of our stitch, which means we need to go right. Yeah, right there. And then down through the center. And then back up through the left. And then down through the center again. Not quite as clean as it has been in the past, but not terrible. Let's clean up these stragglers here. And we will start our stitch in the bottom left to upper right, and then from the upper right we'll dive down to the lower right and go up to the upper left. There it is. We will finish locking it by splitting the weave here, maybe. Yep. I'm going to show you a cool trick in a half second once I finish this up with what to do with fuzzy stitches. Alright, we're going to dive down through the middle if I can find a good spot. Just feeling a little bit too much resistance each time I poked, so I keep poking around until I can find a little less resistance, a hole that the needle naturally wants to fall through, so I'm not yanking it through. We'll split this top weave. And then similarly, getting under this stitch here, trying to find a place where the needle naturally falls through. There's one. Okay. I want to show you something. I'll increment the stitch count in just a half second. So one thing that will sometimes happen, we trimmed off that first strand after our first locking stitch. We trimmed it and we ended up with little fuzzy thread ends. And one of those little fuzzy thread ends got pulled through in this bottom corner, so you can see there's just a little bit of fuzz there. A lot of times what you can do is if you just pull your needle, if you just put your needle in and pull it through, the friction of your floss going through that needle will grab the fuzz and pull it back out to the back. So now fuzz completely gone, which means we get to increment our stitch count. 5071, still at 79% complete. Okay. Let's do this stitch above our blaster, above its largest ring. Gap of 2 above. So we will split it. So this is the bottom left of the stitch we're making. So we'll split it there. And then down through the center. And then up through the left. Pull until you feel just a little resistance. Then back down through the center. That was okay. Not one of my better ones tonight. I think I hopped over a strand of the weave in the Aida cloth. If you don't go down through the exact same strand you split, then you can get a little bump, but it should be fine. So now we'll make our normal stitch. You got me there, camera? There we go. There's half. And there's the other half. So let's lock that sucker down. Gonna have to clean that one up a little bit. It's just a little visible. I think I went down instead of through the middle, a little to the left, and so it's kind of visible. I think splitting it right there will get me there. Find a nice loose, nope. That's gonna have to do. All right, let's get that one tied off or cut off and then go and do some cleanup. Some of them just aren't as clean as they could be, but if you dress them up a little bit, let's take a look at it. We're looking at this one here. So you can see it doesn't really look like an X. You can kind of see the locking stitches, but if we kind of poke that up there, that's not going to look bad. It looks enough like an X now. So we'll increment our stitch count. 5072. Woohoo! Yogi Bear. One more pin stitch on El Blastero, and then we can move on to the W. So this one is going to be one over to the left, then a gap of 1, 2 up. So this is the bottom left corner right there. So we're going to split it right here. I think it's going to be a really clean one. Yep, perfect. Exactly the way it should be right there. know these stars are not the most exciting part of cross stitching, but they're the little details that make it look nice when it's all done. You just have to put up with them as they're happening. But I look back at the other half of this that I've done over here on the left, and the stars really make it look nice. So we'll just keep going, and every stitch we do is another one done. So I mean, you can see my mood. Look, I'm happy. I should switch that over. Do I have a tired one? I do have a tired one. I started a new diet yesterday, and I'm just starting to feel the calorie reduction today. Went for a run today, so my body is screaming at me saying, "What are you doing? I miss all of my beer and my carbs and my sugar." It's okay, you'll get used to it, body. But for now, you just have to suck it up. So I've been chugging a lot of water, drinking coffee like a son of a gun. Coffee can only get you so far when your body's actually craving calories. It's mostly doing the trick though. Okay. 5073. Okay. And I believe that is come on, man. Yep, there we go. That is everything on the X. 1, 2, 3 pin stitches. So now we'll move over to this W. And yeah, we'll actually be able to do quite a few of the pin stitches that are over, if you look at the pattern here, over on this V. The reason I haven't stitched the V itself is because it's so close to the hoop. Tying off and doing traditional stitches, and actually it does interfere with the hoop, so I'd have to start it and then come back. But the pin stitches, because you're not sliding the needle sideways at all, you don't need any horizontal space. You're just going up and down through the fabric. So we could probably do the vast majority of the pin stitches over by the V in addition to the ones by the W, which might not be super fun now, but trust me, we'll thank ourselves later when they're all done. So we'll move the pattern back, and we will get this stitch ready to go right here. That was kind of a guess. I hope it's in the right area. It won't look terrible if I miss. It's just not going to look as clean as it could. Yeah, it's a bit of a miss. See how it's white here? That means the stitch jumped over one of the blue strands in the Ada instead of tucking down neatly under it. So it's okay, because ultimately it gets hidden. So you may be tempted to actually jump between these stars and have big long runs of floss across the back of the hoop. I don't recommend that. Not because it's wasteful, because honestly I don't care. It's 50 cents a color and it's a lot per spool, but because it will make the back of your cross stitch look atrocious. And if it jumps over any of those holes during its journey across the back of your hoop, you will see it from the front, because it will go right over the empty spaces and you'll see little hints of red or yellow or green or whatever color you're using. And heaven forbid you're using this glow-in-the-dark stuff, because then some of these little holes all over the cross stitch will glow at night, which is exactly what you want. There we go. Locked, stocked, and pin stitched. 5,074 stitches. Let's do this one up by the alien head. We're going to do it as a pin stitch, even though technically I could probably utilize the alien stitches to start and stop. But it's so clean back there. I mean, look at how clean that stitching is. I just don't want to interfere with that. So we'll do a pin stitch. We'll just get more and more practice with that. Realize I make all sorts of disgusting sounds when I stitch. I clear my throat and smack my lips and smack into things and burp, and now that I'm filming, I have to be all civilized, which is just, I don't know, not what I'm used to, I guess. Got some fuzz popped through there. I showed you that trick earlier, but I'd like to try to resolve it before. Perfect. No more fuzz. That's one argument for waiting till the end to clip off those leads, but they still just, they get in the way, and I've just grown sick of them. So I cut them off early. I suppose I could cut them off shorter and then come back and clean them up, but I think a little bit of fuzz every once in a while is a small price to pay for having those hangers on out of my way. Split the back here between these two pieces of the weave. And then look for a place to dive back in. That's too tight. Let's try over here. Oh, good enough. I don't like forcing it, but what are you gonna do? It's glorious. Glorious stitch. Just one glorious stitch, bringing the stitch count up to 5075. Still 79% complete. Two more, nope, three more. We got a whole host more. We're gonna just keep cranking through these. I just tried a new thing. I don't know if you caught that. We're gonna see if it actually worked. I pre-split the weave and, ooh, it did work. Oh, okay, we might have just invented a new trick that I'm sure 30,000 old women have already, look at that, gorgeous. 30,000 old women have already discovered about pin stitching. Can you see that there? It's almost invisible. That's my locking stitch. I love it. Okay. Let me finish this one up, and then then we'll talk about what I just discovered here. Very excited. Let's get back to it. Come on, come on. I'm in a hurry now. It's not going to work for the... It's not going to work for the closing stitches, or the closing locking stitch, but I think it'll work great for the starting one. So on this next one, we will try it again. That was terrible. Couldn't. Oh, that'll work. There we go. Alrighty. Perfect. Okay. Let's cut off both this one and that one. Alright, here's the trick. So from the front, let's find our next pin stitch, which is going to be over his eye, his right eye, the eye on the left. Gap of 2 below, and the gap of 2 to the right, which is exactly, so this is the bottom left. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to pre-split the weave. So there's my first. There's my second. And there is my third. So we're going to pre-split it in maybe just 2 places. There, and there. We're gonna open up that way. There's less guesswork, because the needle will tend to naturally fall where we've already opened up. I hope. Let's see. It's kind of like pre-folding in origami. You want to pre-bias the material to a certain direction. That way it naturally falls where you want it to. And you do that at the very beginning where you can actually see everything, instead of once you get stitching and stuff starts getting obscured. Ho 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 ho, that worked like a charm. Look at that, totally invisible. Okay. I'm loving it. Takes just a little extra time, but it's so clean. Let's cut this here. Chalk that one up for the never to be published but always to be referenced cross-stitch book that I will one day write, that I will never write. I'll just print out all the closed captions from all these live streams, take random screenshots, pump in some LaTeX, and there, that'll be in my book. You can have as many volumes as I want. Alright. So we will split the stitches here. And then find a way back down in under the center. That felt great. And then we will split the stitches down here. Woo! That was one of my better ones. Let's finish it off with a nice close haircut. Now, everyone has a good day. Up to stitch count 5077. And he's got a pin stitch on his shoulder. On my shoulder, I'm singing a song that doesn't exist until now. On my shoulder. That one's marked, and that one's marked. I'll just mark these two. The last one will probably take care of itself. All 3 marked. I will never have an ugly pin stitch again. Today is a good day, everybody. Oh, I love this. This is my new trick. Okay. I will narrate that again. Just because I think it's worth explaining again. But on the next stitch. Let me finish this one out here. I have to blow off the extra floss that ends up kind of littered across it. I'm actually going to finish this one by tucking it through these stitches like normal. I think it can be just as clean. See what I've done there? I've slipped it under. All right, let's do another perfect pin stitch over here. How about the one to the bottom left of the, or the bottom right of the sun, right here, somewhere around in here, this region. So that's where it's gonna go. It's gonna go, this is the bottom left of where it's gonna go. So we will split here, here, and there. Yes. There it is. So what I've done is I've pre-split the weave so that it is easier. I forgot how much floss I had, just pulled it all the way through. I don't have a lot, okay? And now the needle tends to just naturally fall through where you've pre-split it. You've basically created your own Aida weave by pre-splitting it. And you end up with those adorable, cute, barely visible locking stitches. And I'll bet you I could even close up that weave. That's like totally invisible. That's amazing. That's what it's supposed to be like. It's all right. Just whack the camera with the hoop out of sheer excitement. Sorry, got a little lost there. Bringing it back, bringing it back. There we go. So you guys are, by the grace of God, not hearing me sing Baby Shark right now. Because I have an 8-month-old who loves that song. And I am totally okay admitting that I also enjoy that song. And I find myself singing or playing that song all day long. And it is taking a very conscious effort of will to not sing it right now. I do expect, however, at some point in the future, I will end up either with a Baby Shark emoji mood or designing and live streaming a Baby Shark pattern that I will of course make available to everybody. Okay, up the stitch count, 5078, 79% complete still. We have a stitch, a gap of 3 here, so there's 1, 2, 3. This is the bottom left, right there. So we'll split that. Yep, so we'll split there. And then we'll split here. There it is. There we go. So this one is a little more pronounced, but only because the roving of the blue Aida cloth is in a different position. It's over instead of under. So I do have a little hill of Aida cloth I have to surmount. So your pin stitches will look a little different depending on whether the roving in the middle is vertical or horizontal. We got lucky the last two were horizontal. This one was vertical, so we had a little bit of fabric we had to jump over, but it's still very small and very subtle with that new method. We were guaranteed not to make it any worse than it had to be. All right, let's lock this one. There we go. $5079. On to the next one. Next one's going to be right here. That's the bottom left. Oh, this is going to be another clean one because the roving here goes horizontal. Can you see that? So because this is horizontal here, our locking stitch can kind of hide underneath it. So we'll split there, there, and there. And you'll see this one will just disappear. If I pop through the right hole. That one there, thank you. And this is going to be another really subtle small one. That'll look really nice. He says, right before he finds out that it's hideous. No, that's a good one. See how small that is? Okay. So one thing I really like to do when I'm stitching is to make sure that the background behind my hoop is a bright contrasting color to the color of the fabric that I'm stitching with. So you'll notice that I am stitching with a dark blue Aida cloth, which, if you haven't noticed yet, maybe, look into that. And my background is a bright white surface. I'll show you in a half second. See? It's white, and it's reasonably bright. And you can see all sorts of little loose threads and junk back there. There we go. Keep it all clean. All right. What that does is you can see, look when I hold this up, you can see all the little holes in the fabric because they shine right through. Sometimes I will have a laptop and use the backlighting of the screen to that same effect. Other times, if I'm stitching on a white cloth, I will use a dark background to make it more obvious. But being able to clearly see where the holes in the Aida cloth are is incredibly helpful. It would be a miserable venture without that. 5080. One more stitch in the books. And I think we have about one more stitch in this piece of floss before we retire it and move on to our next one. So let's do this guy up here. So it is even with the top row of the star, and it's a gap of 2 from the middle row. So there's 1, 2. This will be another clean one here. Split, split, split. Cool. If you guys could see inside my brain, I am rocking out to Baby Shark in my own head right now. You guys who think it's this annoying little kid song are missing out on a musical masterpiece. If my son were older than 8 months, we would have front row tickets to Baby Shark Live, touring now. Get your tickets, coming to a major city near you. He will almost certainly end up with a at least partial Baby Shark themed first birthday. There might be some Moana in there. If there were baby sharks in Moana, oh man, that would be like earth-shattering implications there. All right, let's lock this one down. And I think after this stitch, we're going to end it. I know I got a bit of a late start, and I'd like to go for an hour, but I think 10 o'clock is my hard cut tonight. So that one is locked. We'll cut it. We'll up the stitch count to 5081. Still at 79%. We'll eventually cross over into that 80%. And you can see we've actually done really well. We did 3 pin stitches up here, 3 down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by the alien, and then 4 over by the sun. So I think just 2 more over here by the sun, and we are going to move on to back stitching, which is a whole other fun exercise where we outline everything. So back stitching next time. That'll be great. Show you how to do that. Then we'll get to move the hoop. And we'll be really, really darn close to finishing. So thank you for joining in. I appreciate it. And we will do this again soon. Have a lovely evening and a lovely tomorrow.